Okay, next phase is going to be fitting the knife to the handle material. This is how we receive it in sheets. We get this from Pop's Knife Supply. He didn't pay me to do a drop for him, but he's a good guy. Family business, and they have really good prices on micarta. And good customer service, good stuff. So, and the way we do it is because everything's nice and true at the guard joint, we'll set it, make sure this is in frame for you guys. We'll set the guard on the phenolic like this, and then we'll check it. And so you can see that's a pretty good fit. And I'll actually check it on, if it's a new sheet, all 4 surfaces. On a U sheet like this, I'll check it on 3 surfaces to see which one gives me the best fit. And I can tell you it's probably that one. And so you're just looking, sighting down the spine, looking for any visible gaps. And I'll even check both sides, because if there is a little bit of a pitch to the edge from the kerf of the blade, that can either work with or against any cant to your guard that you might have. And this one's pretty decent, so we like that. Then I'll take my precision marking instrument and I'll trace around the perimeter, keeping pressure down all the time, pressure going this way so that it doesn't move. And as I'm demonstrating, I move it. It's okay. Go back through, scrub that out. Now, this comes from other knives. What I'm about to show you, we used to, if they were straight handled like our EDCs, it's real easy to get them confused. So even still out of habit, I just put an arrow pointing to the tip of the blade, and then I'll write either an O or an R, which in this case it's R, and R is for reverse. It's the reverse side of the knife. This would be the obverse side of the knife. And so by putting that down, I don't get them confused as far as fitment. Like I said, if there were any issue with the guard and one side fits better than the other, you don't want to have any gaps up here. So I always write down, and that's anywhere that the writing is considered to be the inside of the scale. So even if the writing stayed, the customer would never see it. And so, but that's inside of everybody's knife. They all say R with an arrow. And so put that down. Let's flip this guy over, check the fit. Pretty stoked with the fit. Looks good. Here you can see kind of the Hollywood side. Make sure we get that, no gaps. And that's what we want. So bring it back over. Trace it again. Pull it tight. On this side, oh, arrow. In this case, since we're doing 4 Simians, I take a look right under the guard. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but right under the guard I have, with the vibrating pen, I put in what number it is. So this is, of this batch, number 3. So we'll put Sim number 3, Sim number 3. That way, once these all get blanked out, they don't get confused. And so I'm kind of flying solo on the camera right now. Jenna's running some shit to heat treat, so I'm sorry if anything was out of frame or kind of wonky. But we wanted to show you guys this, and now we're going to take it over to the bandsaw and blank these out. Alright, so the next bit's going to be kind of loud. You can see, make sure you can see that we've got them laid out based on where the best fit to the guard was. And a couple more back here. So it's going to be kind of a visual gag from here on out, but I'm going to go through and blank these out on the bandsaw so you guys can see how I do it. Bandsaw, definitely no fucking around. We've got pretty strict policy in the shop if anybody's in here working with us. Don't talk to them, don't ask questions. Somebody's on the bandsaw, and if you're on the bandsaw, don't answer. Don't pay any attention, because it's really easy to go from, you know, here to here, or load up pressure on a dull band and have it bounce back, and it'll mess you up pretty good. So just respect the tool. They are sharp. They don't care about the meter bones on your hand at all. So yeah, just respect it and be careful when you're running these. We run dust collection to ours, and it's one of the few times you'll see me wear safety glasses too. Alright, so we talked about setting liners on the scales, and now I'm going to show you guys how we attach our scales. It's a little bit different than some people might do it. Again, different strokes for different folks. This has always worked for me, so this is the way I do it. We use double-sided tape, and I like to leave about 3/8 of an inch. This gap right here, I like to leave it on the guard side, and it'll make sense here in a second when we apply it. So I throw that on like that, trim off any of the excess so I can see what I'm doing when I'm laying the scale on the knife tang. Alright, throw that away. Get off my fingers. And you have tape right here, so you have an adhesive side to the scale. I already went through and matched up because, like I said earlier, we're doing 4 knives. Sim 3, everything's good. Peel off the protective layer of the adhesive. And this is why I like to leave the tape back a little bit, is I'll slide it all the way until it hits the guard. Make sure the tang is centered on there, so there should be no metal overhanging. It should be all micarta sitting proud around the perimeter of the handle. You can see there's no gap. Happy with the way everything is there. I'm going to take it over to the vise. And this particular double-sided tape, you guys are coming with me. This particular double-sided tape takes a minute to set up and have a good bond. So here you go, it's sitting in the vise. It doesn't take very long. A couple 3 minutes is all you're going to need. While it's setting, we'll bring you guys, sorry about all the motion sickness, but I'm a one-man film crew. Jenna's in there editing videos. So we're going to take it over to the drill press. Now with the micarta, especially if you are using a used bit that might be dull, it's good to have a piece of flat scrap wood underneath it just to back it up as you're drilling, especially with linen. This is canvas, but especially with linen, I've had it kind of blister. So it pops through and it'll swell up the other end. You have to remove a bunch of material to get it back where you want. Just creating more work for yourself. And so I'm just gonna disco that from the vise. So now our tang is firmly attached to our handle scale. So make sure nothing shifted in the clamp. Everything looks good. Set that down right there. I'll use the tang as my drill guide. If you have a drill press and you don't have one of these clamps, you're missing out. I think they're like $8 from Harbor Freight. They kind of suck from Harbor Freight as far as durability goes. I've actually used drill stock to rebuild the pin, and I've kind of built it up a little bit over the years so that it'll last longer, but it's held up just fine. And for $8, I mean, it's a whole nother set of hands. The drill press is set still for steel, so it's at 300 RPMs, which is fine. The only time I ever actually change it is when I'm drilling through leather, and then I bump it up to 700. Otherwise, it spends 90% of its life at 300 RPMs. So you got nice clean holes, no blistering, no flashing, no nothing around the edges. Okay, the only drawback, you guys are going to be on the move again. The only drawback to using tape on the tangs is that it's hard to take off, and so you can see this thing, make sure it's in frame, it's got some mileage. This was just a soft face mallet, but all I do is just leave a little corner tab sticking out and smack it, and it comes off. I mean, we use micarta because it's so damn indestructible, so you're not going to hurt it. It doesn't even notice the impact. Peel off the excess tape. Wash, rinse, repeat. You don't want to have a lot of excess oil on the tang. Obviously, you want to make sure it's fairly clean. It doesn't have to be like wiped down with alcohol or anything, but not a lot of excess oil, no debris. That'll inhibit the adhesion of the tape. And then you end up with, get you guys back in the frame. There we go. And then you end up with a shitty bond, and as you're drilling, it'll wobble around, or worse yet, move on you. Then not only will you have a gap up here, your holes won't line up. So I mean, just make sure it's kind of clean. It's the little things, man. Shut off my finger. Peel the tape. If you let this tape sit on there for too long, like if you were to let it sit overnight, it becomes a real bitch to get off. So usually I don't like to leave it on there any more than 15-20 minutes. There we go. Let's see the reveal again. All the way around. Nice tight fit at the guard. Back to clamping it up. Take you guys back one more time as we go by the vise. Back to the drill press. For guys who are shopping for tools, we use the Porter cable floor drill press. It's okay. I don't think I'll get another one. I've had a few issues with it. It does run nice and slow, but it's not the slowest. It can be a little bit run out at times, which means that the Morse taper on the headstock it moves, and so I mean it's not as precise as a mill. Not that many are. This one's, it's okay. I think it's great for woodworking. I don't think it's too shit hot for metal work if you're trying to do any precision work. I've had it for a couple years, and already the return spring is smoked. So I have to manually retract the headstock all the time, which is kind of a pain in the ass. It does have its advantages. You can use it for centering a lot easier because I can just let go. You know, I'm not holding it. And so that's kind of nice, but I think the next one will be like a jet or something a little bit more production minded. The Harbor Freight ones are okay. They can be a little rickety if you don't get the production model. That'd be my only contention. Sweet burrs down there. It's gonna throw my holes off soon. There we go. Cool. Back over here. And there you go. So next up, I'm going to drill these two real quick. I won't subject you guys to that. And as soon as we're done with that, I'll show you countersinking, epoxying, and tube flaring. Thanks for watching. Okay, as promised, we are back to show you guys how we countersink the tops. We use flared stainless steel tubing and epoxy to keep our scales on the tang. And so you have to have a countersunk portion up here to give room for the flare to sit flush with the rest of the micarta. And so the way we do that is with a brass bench block, a countersink 82 degree, load it into here. Again, we keep the RPMs at about 300. And I just come in by eyeball to about there. And I've got, it's like a drill index gauge, and we're looking for 3/8 diameter of the countersunk portion. And so it's not a Swiss watch, this part, we just need it close. But what I'll do is, you can see, I'm trying to get the angle so you can see the contrast. That lines up with 3/8. A little bit smaller, it's got a little bit of frame, around 25/64. So we're pretty good. Now, to make this repeatable so that we don't have to do that every single time, I will drop my cutter into there, and then I come up here. You guys can't see, it's different on just about every drill press, but they all have it. So I'm just setting my depth gauge just to the point. This is a screw type, where see how this spins freely, and I got a little bit of pressure on it, still spins freely, so I'm going to lower it 1/2 measurement, and there we are. So it still touches. Oh shit! Sometimes you got to hold on tighter than you think. Now I'm going to go back and see. Same material, same setting. If it was black linen, I'm pretty sure that if I recall, the black linen is 1/2 measurement thinner, so you'd have to adjust it. But if you're working off the same piece of material, no liners, everything's the same, this should also be the same. Let's prep the surfaces. I just use lacquer thinner, microfiber rags. We use these for just about everything in the shop because they don't leave any lint. You can see the tape residue from when we drilled the scales. It's still on the tang, and that will, if allowed to stay there, it'll keep the mating surfaces from being even, and you'll end up with gaps. So you just want to make sure everything's clean. The tubes mechanically hold everything in place. The epoxy at this point that we're going to apply really just produces provides a moisture barrier, so you can submerge the knife in water and you won't get any water, moisture, anything between the scale and the tang, which could cause corrosion over time. And so nice and clean there. Solder joint looks good. Let's do the scales themselves. Looks decent. Okay, so we start off by putting the tubes in the scale. We'll take our epoxy. I don't know if I mentioned this in previous videos or not, but when you're doling out your epoxy, you usually want to put down your first bead as half as much as you think it's going to take to do the job, because by the time you add the second part, you're effectively doubling the volume. So even if it's been a while since I glued something, I'll even go a little bit too rich on it, and it's just wasteful. You end up with a huge puddle that you're never going to use. It's 5-minute epoxy, same as we used on the liners. Let's just mix it up real well. It's morning time here in the shop, so it's a little bit cooler. You can see that it's a little bit more viscous than it was yesterday when we did the liners at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Take our epoxy, working from the outside of the puddle, not the middle, and you want to completely cover the surface of the scale. You don't have to be too stingy, but you want to make sure that there's enough for both sides. Otherwise, you have to mix another batch in the middle, and that can result in the epoxy setting before you're done, and then it's hard to clamp and get a good tight fit. If you're nervous about this part, working with the 5-minute epoxy, then get 15 or 60-minute. I just don't have the patience for it, so I like the fast stuff. Right here, take special care, and you want to coat the whole face of the scale where it's going to join up to the guard. But most importantly, you want to build up a little bead along the edge, because as you put the knife on the scale, that nice tight guard fit, it's going to push all that epoxy through the joint, so if there was even a small gap, it'll fill it in. So then you move to the tang, and this will, what I just told you about the guard face will make more sense here in a second when you see it in action. It's okay to get it around the tubes, make contact with the tubes. All the holes are countersunk, so the epoxy fills in right there and actually keeps the handle a little bit more stable as the epoxy cures. Now the tubes are glued in place too. Now, you don't want to paint the guard, you want to paint the face of the scale. And so we're going to put an even coating around the whole thing. And again, put that bead on the tang side of the scale. And you'll be able to, hopefully you can see this. When you press it into place, the epoxy transfers that bead to the, let's see if you guys can really see that. See that buildup of epoxy? That's what's filling in any potential gaps right there at that spot. And so Jenna, if you could give me a hand, we're going to take you over to our 1-ton arbor press. Make sure your tubes are nice and straight. And we got these flaring dies from Tracy over at USA Knife Makers. And I think they're just under 82 degrees. I haven't actually checked them, but with the 82-degree countersink and the thickness of the tube, I think it comes into just under. But they work really well. You want to, I start in the middle and then do the ends. And then I flip it over, do the other side. And then we move to the vise. Where we clamp it up until the epoxy's set. Now, I've got a pretty good scar on my belly from a knife being left in a vise. So we're really, really adamant about keeping these loose, and we'll even yell it out in the shop if it's the middle of the day, just so everyone's aware that there is a knife in a vise. Even though it has no edge, it still has a point, and it can still get you pretty good. So we try to leave this loose, and then we throw the knife over the bench so that somebody walking by doesn't get snagged on it and cut open. But basically, that's how we glue on our handles, and I'm going to shape them, and then we'll put up some pictures of the final knife. Thanks for watching.